I was wrong about Ron DeSantis not running for president in 2028. I now believe that Ron DeSantis will in fact be running for president in 2028. I didn't think so, but now I think so. Anyway, hold on, let me mute myself. So, what's up? This is Mark Kaye Saves the Republic the day after Memorial Day. What do you call the day after Memorial Day? I guess Tuesday. And we have a lot to get to, man. There's a whole, you know what, for a day off, 1 day off. There's 1 day off yesterday, and then when we were all praying and remembering those soldiers who died so that we could do this. You know, this is the thing. People always say, you got to remember the people that gave their lives so that we could do what we do. And what I do is I sit here at my desk every single day screaming into a microphone in front of some lights and a camera, and I say, this person's horrible, and this person's awful, and this person's great. And, I can't do that. Or I can only do that, rather, because of all the people that went out there bravely and fought with guns and with their lives and with, all kinds of other things, just facing the horrors. So hopefully you were able to take some time yesterday to remember them and to thank them and to pray for them and their families. And also, let's be honest, man, the future, it's amazing to me how you see war and you see what happens, and there's still people that wake up and go, you know what? That's my calling. I want to do that. And when you look out, for example, when President Donald Trump over the weekend was at West Point and he was talking to all the graduates, you look at all these young kids, these 20-year-olds or whatever they are, and they're just starting their lives, and they decided at an early age that they wanted to go and they wanted to learn and they wanted to train and they wanted to serve their country to the point where they went to school for it. I mean, a lot of enlisted, they just go, they sign up, they head out to basic training, and that's it. They're in. They do a couple tours, maybe they leave. But these folks, they dedicated 4 years of their lives to learning the art and the history and the execution of combat. And now they are the biggest and the brightest that we have. And they're moving forward into the ranks of President Donald Trump's military under the expert guidance of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Raisin Cain, General Raisin Cain. I got to tell you, man, I went to see Mission Impossible over the weekend, the last Mission Impossible 98 or whatever it was. And the crew that Tom Cruise puts together kind of reminds me of Donald Trump's cabinet. The best of the best, these crazy, good-looking people that just will do anything, anywhere, anytime to get the job done. That's exactly what Donald Trump's put together with his cabinet. Listen, we're going to get to these DOGE. DOGE may have been doged. The representatives in the Congress, the do-nothing Republicans, I got to tell you, the Democrats are crazy and the Republicans are lazy. Or they're corrupt. I'm not really sure which one it is, but it's another reason why we need to clear out the old guard and bring in the new. We need to clear out the old corrupt, been there forever, a deep swamp operative type Republicans. We need to bring in some new, fresh, young, combative Republicans that have no ties to any special interest group, that have no ties to any government agency, that haven't been on the take for the USAID or any of those other things that Elon Musk wants to cut, because those Republicans are making it impossible for Elon Musk and President Donald Trump to cut what needs to be cut. The waste, the fraud, and the abuse, it's not coming out. It's not coming out of the budget at all. And there are no votes scheduled to cut it out of the budget. And a lot of people are losing faith that the Republicans in Congress are going to do anything to help President Donald Trump, especially after, Elon Musk basically gave up almost his entire career, his companies, his livelihood, oh my God, this guy's reputation has been dragged through the mud over the last year. Not to mention the hundreds of millions of dollars he spent on some of these initiatives, the amount of his personal time that he dedicated to clearing out waste, fraud, and abuse in government. And the machine of the deep state swamp creatures is something that is almost impenetrable. Even somebody like Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, who can build rockets that go into outer space and land back on the U.S. soil, they're reusable. Even someone like Elon Musk, who can create the most lucrative and the most technologically advanced electric cars in the universe. Even Elon Musk, who can bore amazing holes and tunnels underneath the ground to create these electric, thoroughfares. Even he couldn't stop the deep state swamp. That's how powerful this thing is. I have an idea that I think is going to, I don't know if it'll work, but it will at least help. And we'll get to all that here in just a minute. But first, in a rare moment of, I guess you would say, pre-planning. Today is Tuesday, and last week, you may remember if you were watching, I announced that we were going to bring back Tuesday's Reviews Days. And I went to my phone and I said, hey, Siri, set a reminder for next Tuesday that it's Reviews Day. And 15 minutes before the show, guess what happened? See, you don't have to even guess. I'll just tell you. Siri sent me my reminder that I set that said, reminder, Tuesday Reviews Days. Tuesday Reviews Day coming up in 15 minutes. So I was like, oh, right. Thank you, Siri, my own personal assistant. And what I did was I went on and I got some of the reviews. And I have to tell you, there was one review in particular I thought was amazing. I thought it was one of the most incredible reviews. Not only was it an incredible review, but it was really, I think, a fantastic way to, describe the show. One of the best descriptions of the show I've ever heard. And so I want to start with that. By the way, I should get some kind of intro for Tuesday Reviews Day so that, like Tuesday Reviews Day. That would require extra effort on my part, though, and I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a one-man. I'm working my tail off every single day anyway. We're going to have to start outsourcing. Once we get more viewers and followers and subscribers, in fact, if you haven't yet subscribed, maybe you want to do that right now. Once we start getting more super chats, which, by the way, we'll shout you out. If you want to leave your review in the form of a super chat or a Rumble rant, by all means, we will get it on there. We will read it to you. We will read your message, whatever it happens to be. And that, of course, will allow us to continue to bring us this program and maybe even start hiring some people so we can get some more, we can get some like jingles. Tuesdays, Reviews Days. Wow, something like that. Anyway, let's go to the reviews, shall we? These are curated from Apple Podcasts and other places. And over the past couple months, we've gotten a bunch of them. The first one I want to share here with you says, the title is, I Am 13. I love this show, and I have listened since I was 11. My dad showed me this show, and I love it. Pardon me. That is a great review for a couple reasons. Number one, I can tell that 11 and 13-year-olds relate to my sense of humor because I often, people always say to me, what are you, 12? Whenever I tell a joke or whenever I say something, they always go, what are you, 12? And so if you're like 11, 13, you're right there in the median age. So that's great show, Mark. Great show, Mark. I appreciate that very much. Great show, Mark. Thank you so much for that review. And hopefully you'll still be listening when you're 14 and 15. Typically what happens is as you get older and older, you find the things your parents told you about to be less cool. You find you're like, oh, that's not cool. My dad listens to that. Or, oh, it's not cool. My mom, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully this will continue to be cool even as you get into the later years, your teen years and that kind of thing. This is from Miss Believer, who wrote most consistent podcaster. That sounds like a, what do you call it? The things that they put in the back of the yearbook, like most likely to become a billionaire, most likely to be in jail, most likely to have a child out of wedlock. What do you call it? Superlatives. That's what that sounds like. Most consistent. And the most consistent podcaster award goes to Mark Kaye, Saves a Republic. Yay! But anyway, Miss Believer writes, most consistent podcaster. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and Mark Kaye is one of the most consistent podcasters with current information that is posted daily. I love what I hear I love that what I hear is up-to-date information. I love how you post multiple times a day if needed to get the info out to your listeners. Great job, Kaye. Thank you, Miss Believer. I really do. Appreciate that, and we appreciate the review. By the way, if you would like to leave a review on the podcast platforms, Apple or Spotify or wherever, we will read yours in a future Tuesday Reviews Day. This is one of my favorites ever. This next one is from Ben from Green Bay. I'm guessing Ben's from Green Bay. And Ben wrote, severely conservative. Severely conservative. Great, clean, right-wing pod. I mean, that's got to be not only one of the best reviews, but I think one of the most descriptive reviews of this show. Severely conservative. That is I've never described myself, nor have I been described as severely conservative, but I'll take it. Great, clean, right-wing pod. And there's nothing with that I can't agree with. I am great. I mean, that's not my words. It's Ben from Green Bay's. Clean. I shower every day. Sometimes twice. I showered In fact, I got to tell you, I showered like 4 times in 2 days this weekend. I showered in the morning because I went out to power wash, and I only got half of the power washing done. And then we had to go out somewhere with the kids, so I had to shower quickly. Then when I came home, I had to finish off the power washing. And so I got filthy again. I had to shower again. And then on Sunday, I had to shave my face and my head. So I showered everything off, after I shaved. And then we went in the pool for Memorial Day. So we had a little pool party impromptu, and then I was all covered with chlorine. So I had to shower again. 4 showers in 48 hours. So yes, very clean. Also, I don't cuss. And then Right Wing Pod. Again, thank you very much, Ben from Green Bay. That's really severely conservative. The severely conservative Mark Kaye saves the Republic podcast. Save the Republic, writes Roy. Great show. Listen every day. Again, I appreciate all of that. And then, of course, Ricky A with a W. That's Ricky with a W. W-R-I-C-K-Y. I imagine it's Ricky with just like a silent W, but Ricky A writes, saving the Republic. It's fun and entertaining. Run, Mark, run. Now, by the way, that brings, thank you very much to everybody. Thank you for all of those great reviews. Thank you so much. 13-year-old kid. Thank you so much, Miss Believer and Ben from Green Bay. Everybody, don't forget to leave a review for a future edition of Tuesday's Reviews Days. But one thing I want to mention again, this week, and we mentioned this yesterday, is a regular week. Next week, I kind of lied to you. I said I wasn't going to have any shows, but I may actually have a couple of shows. And then what we're going to do is when we get back, because I'm off next week, but I think I have some pre-recorded content. I think I have some really, some interviews that I'm lining up that I think are going to be really good that I'm going to air next week as if they were live. So if you're like, how can I go a whole week without the severely conservative Mark Kaye? Don't worry, don't fret, because I think I got you covered. And then, of course, when I get back, I told you on the 9th of June, Monday, June the 9th, at noon o'clock Eastern time, I will be bringing you a very, very, very important announcement. 12 noon, June the 9th. So set your alarm. Again, I'm going to set my series so that I don't forget about it, because I won't forget. This is the most important announcement of my life. So noon o'clock, that's coming up. It's a very, very important and very, very exciting announcement. I hope you all enjoy it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Here's what we got going on today. DOGE could be doged. Elon Musk replied to a tweet or an X post from Matt Van Swol. Matt Van Swol, I don't know if you know Matt Van Swol, but Matt Van Swol was, let me read his, and you know what? I'll just read his actual bio so I don't mess it up. Former nuclear scientist for U.S. Department of Energy, ex-photographer for Apple, United, and Hyatt. And now he just posts on X all day like most people do. Matt Van Swol wrote something on X that said, DOGE is literally one of the most popular government initiatives in history. 73% of Americans say they support cutting government waste. Trump brought in the smartest man on earth to do it. The left destroyed Elon for it. The GOP won't vote on it. I can't believe this. Elon Musk replied to that post, did my best, which, if you think about this, it's the most Elon response ever. But DOGE was one of the most popular things President Donald Trump ever came up with. When he originally put Elon Musk and, remember, Vivek Ramaswamy, two of the most popular people in his orbit, in charge of DOGE, everybody was excited. Everybody was thrilled. Everyone was like, do it. Let's do this. Let's go. Let's DOGE it. Department of Government Efficiency. It was a huge thing. And they began cutting waste immediately. They started hiring people. They brought people in. They started an X account. They started listing all of the stuff. They got what's the name? Big Balls in there. All the people. They went into the Treasury Department and they found waste, fraud, abuse. They went onto the Social Security rolls. They found waste, fraud, and abuse. Wherever there was waste, fraud, and abuse, DOGE was right there to itemize it, to make sure that it didn't get out of hand, and to make sure that it was put on the chopping block. The entire USAID building was shut down. They shut down all those programs in Peru where they had like transgender comic books and Iraqi Sesame Street and all these other weird things that we were funding. And Matt Van Swol is right. Trump brought in the smartest man on earth to do it and gave him carte blanche. Not only the smartest, but the most effective, because that's what it takes. It doesn't just take intelligence. It takes effective leadership. And Elon Musk was able to, bring in coders and bring in, analysts and bring in data processors and bring in people that with algorithms and AI could go in and just in days go through everything. It would have taken years. We figured out that the reason that retirements are down in the federal government is because manual retirements are processed in an old limestone mine with an elevator and massive amounts of transfer cases. And if the elevator should break, guess what? Nobody can go to the transfer cases and get your information so that you can retire. DOGE said that's a ridiculous waste of time and resources. We need to update that. Scott Bessent in the Treasury Department said DOGE was able to go in and clean out the Social Security rolls, find all those people who are dead or 100 years old or 300 years old or however many years old they claim to be, and get them out of there. And they just took 1 million people off of the Social Security rolls that, guess what? They were receiving payments. These are people that have no business getting money from the government. It's waste, it's fraud, it's abuse. And the GOP is fully aware of everything that DOGE is doing. The GOP is fully aware of the cuts that Elon Musk made. They know all this stuff, but they haven't had one single vote on it. They haven't had one single vote to codify the DOGE cuts. They haven't had one single vote at all to get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse in the USAID, the waste, fraud, and abuse in the Social Security Department, the waste, fraud, and abuse all over the government. Not one vote in the House of Representatives, and no votes are scheduled. And guess what? They're actually off this week. They took a week off. They did all that work, passing the big, beautiful bill. And then they decided they were going to take a week off. They'll be back next week. God knows what's on the docket, but we know what's not on the docket, codifying the DOGE cuts. You know who's not happy about it? Marjorie Taylor Greene. She replied to Matt Van Swoel and she said, I can't disagree with anything here. We should have been voting on DOGE cuts every single week. Guess what they haven't been doing? Voting on DOGE cuts every single week. There are Republicans in the House of Representatives who are for cutting all of these wasteful, fraudulent, and abusive programs. They are for cutting all the wasteful, fraudulent, and abusive taxpayer-related stupid things that we've been paying for. They are all about the DOGE cuts. They don't want people on Social Security who are dead. It doesn't make any sense. It's a waste of money. Why are we paying dead people? And really, if we're paying dead people, who's actually getting the money? They don't want people on the voter rolls. They don't want to fund transgender Peruvian comic books. They don't even want to fund NPR. And that's here in the United States of America. That's a story for another day. We'll get to that in just a minute. But another surprise opponent or vocal, I guess you would say, critic of Congress came from right here in Florida. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He wrote on X, let me see here. Elon Musk took massive, let me tighten this up a little bit so we can see it all. There we go. Elon Musk took massive incoming, including attacks on his companies, as well as personal smears to lead the effort on DOGE. He became public enemy number one of legacy media around the world. To see Republicans in Congress cast aside any meaningful spending reductions and, in fact, fully fund things like USAID is demoralizing and represents a betrayal of the voters who elected him. This is exactly what's been going on. And this is a split now in the Republican Party. This is a new, I guess you would say, a new litmus test for Republicans. If you are willing to codify the DOGE cuts, if you're willing to vote these things into permanent law, then you are not a part of the swamp. But if you don't bring them up, or if you refuse to vote or support them, or if you think that they're a bad idea, or if you just ignore any action that should be taken, then obviously you are risking something, or you are looking to lose something personal to you, whether it's support or funding or super PAC money. Remember, the tentacles of all of these agencies and initiatives that DOGE is trying to cut don't just run through the Democrat Party. There's a lot of Republicans who are benefiting as well. And now we're starting to see that. Matt Van Swoel also wrote, we all saw Elon choose to sacrifice everything he had in order to stop waste and fraud in the government. They burned his showrooms. They protested him in the streets. They vandalized Teslas across the country. Yet the GOP does nothing. Unreal. This is why I believe Ron DeSantis is going to run for president. This is why I believe that. I thought that maybe Ron DeSantis was done with that. I thought he was going to look around and he was going to survey the landscape, and he was going to say, we got JD Vance, who's probably the number one pick because he is vice president and he's doing a great job. He was handpicked by Donald Trump, and I know a lot of people support him. We also have Marco Rubio, who's doing an amazing job as Secretary of State, who's also run for president before, who's 100% MAGA, who's Latino. Maybe he'd be another great choice as either president or vice president with JD Vance. Then there's Donald Trump Jr. Donald Trump Jr., who has not ruled out a run for president, has said, the calling is there. He was asked point blank, would you run for president? He goes, you know what? The calling is there. I never say never. I'm not going to rule anything out. Remember those Trump 2028 hats that caused quite a stir? You have to remember the Trump 2028 hat that they sold, that I purchased one of, it doesn't say Donald Trump 2028. It just says Trump 2028. And there's a lot of other Trumps. There's Ivanka, there's Eric, there's Don Jr., there's Tiffany, there's Barron. I think Tiffany and Barron are too young, but the other three, there's a lot of Trumps. It's not just Donald. So Trump 2028 could 100% be a thing. And I thought he'd look around, maybe say, you know what, it's a crowded field. I don't know if I have the support. I don't know if I have the base. I don't know if people would want me to run after how I botched it the first time. We still don't know about Vivek Ramaswamy, what he's going to do after a couple of years as governor if he wins in Ohio, which he probably will. So you have to look around and go, was Ron DeSantis even going to jump in the ring? Well, now I think he is. Because what he's doing here, by backing Elon, Ron DeSantis is saying Elon Musk took massive incoming, including attacks on his companies as well as personal smears, to lead the effort on DOGE. To see Republicans in Congress cast aside any meaningful spending reductions is demoralizing and represents a betrayal of the voters who elected them. What is Ron DeSantis doing here? Ron DeSantis is picking up any and all of the MAGA faithful who are annoyed that Congress has done nothing. And they're annoyed that the DOGE cuts have not been made permanent. And they're annoyed that the Republicans in Congress seem to be sitting on their hands while Elon Musk's life is being torn apart and his businesses are being destroyed. And he himself has become public enemy number one. What are the Republicans in Congress doing? Why don't they have his back? Sure, they created a DOGE caucus. That was all well and good. Sure, they had DOGE committees. They had Elon come in. They took tours. They all took photos with him. That was neat. That was a fun couple months. But now, where's the actual action on DOGE? Where are the cuts being made? They're not. And Ron DeSantis sees this. And Ron DeSantis knows that in 2028, if he, I guess you would say, adopts the DOGE mentality or picks up where Elon left off or was left off by the Republican Congress, he could use that as a platform. Making the DOGE cuts permanent, if they're never made permanent in the next 4 years, could be a great way for him to run or mount a campaign. And when you think about it, when you remember back, Elon Musk himself was a DeSantis supporter. Ron DeSantis announced his candidacy on X. Remember that botched? It was horrible. It was one of those terrible. It was what are they? Not Teams. That's Microsoft Teams. Not the Teams meeting? It's called the Spaces. They had this big X Spaces, and Ron DeSantis was supposed to come on, and he was supposed to talk about how he was going to run for president, and it was going to be this big event, and it didn't work for like 30 minutes. And all we heard was weird music, and then we heard Elon Musk talking to one of his techs, and then we heard some maniacal laughing, and then we heard somebody say, Red Rum. I'm just kidding. I just made that last part up. And then all of a sudden, Ron DeSantis came on, but by that time, it was way too late, and the whole thing was just a cluster, you know what. And it became the very first punchline in a long line of punchlines that peppered Ron DeSantis' candidacy. It wasn't meant to be for Ron DeSantis in 2024, but Ron DeSantis is clearly looking forward to 2028, and he's using DOGE as his platform. He's going to be watching very carefully, and all of the things that Donald Trump wanted to get done that Congress and the rhinos and the deep state are not going to allow him to get done, or are going to thwart him doing, or just flat out go against him. Basically what they're doing is they're saying, no, Donald Trump, we don't want to cut all this stuff. We don't want to cut all this stuff from the budget. We like all this DOGE stuff in there. That's why we're not doing anything. That's why we're not doing anything to make any changes. Stephen Miller came out with a very lengthy post that I wanted to share with you. Stephen Miller, I guess because it was Memorial Day, they weren't doing a lot of TV. We're not a lot of audio clips of Stephen Miller. There was no new Miller time, but he did go on X and he wrote something which I read in his voice. Whenever I read something from Stephen Miller, I read it and I imagine the way he would say it if he was yelling at somebody on television. This was about the DOGE cuts and also the big, beautiful bill. And this is something that has been, it's only been a couple days, but this is something that's been debated and bandied about, and that people are, they're going back and forth on the big, beautiful bill. Does the big, beautiful bill actually inflate the deficit, or does it save money? Does it cut trillions, or does it add trillions? Rand Paul and Thomas Massey will tell you that it does the opposite, that it adds trillions, according to the CBO. But Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, other Republicans on the right, Mike Johnson, they will tell you that is not the case and that the math is flawed. And that what the big, beautiful bill actually does is it cuts the costs. Stephen Miller explained it. He said, "I've seen a few claims making the rounds on the big, beautiful bill that require a correction. The first is that it doesn't codify the DOGE cuts. A reconciliation bill, which is a budget bill that passes with 50 votes, is limited by Senate rules to mandatory spending only. For example, Medicaid and food stamps. You can cut Medicaid and food stamps because that's mandatory spending. The DOGE cuts are not. So in this bill, cutting or codifying the DOGE cuts is impossible by law. The Senate rules prevent it from cutting discretionary spending. For example, the Department of Education or federal grants. The DOGE cuts are overwhelmingly discretionary, not mandatory. The bill saves more than $1.6 trillion in mandatory spending, including the largest ever welfare reform, a remarkable achievement. I've also seen claims that the bill increases the deficit. This is a lie based on a CBO accounting gimmick. Income tax rates from the 2017 tax cut are set to expire in September. They were always planned to be permanent. CBO says maintaining current rates adds to the deficit, but by definition, leaving these income tax rates unchanged cannot add 1 penny to the deficit. The bill's spending cuts reduce the deficit against the current law baseline, which is the only correct baseline to use. Another fantastically false claim is that the bill spends trillions of dollars. This is just completely invented out of whole cloth. This is not a 10-year budget bill. It doesn't fund almost any operations of government which are funded in the annual budget bills, which this is not. In other words, if this bill passed, but the annual budget bill did not, there would be no government funding. Under the math that critics are using, if we passed a 1-paragraph reconciliation bill that cut simply $50 billion in food stamp spending, they would say the bill added trillions in spending and debt because they are counting all the projected federal spending that exists entirely outside the scope of this legislation, which is, of course, preposterous. The only funding in the bill is for the president's border and defense priorities while enacting a net spending cut of over $1.6 trillion. The bill has 2 fiscal components, a massive tax cut and a massive spending cut. So Stephen Miller explaining you can't codify the DOGE cuts in the big, beautiful bill. And that's something that, most people knew, or if you didn't know, now you do. They're not mandatory spending bills. And yes, if you're using reconciliation, it's only mandatory spending, not discretionary spending. That's the big difference. But that doesn't mean that the House of Representatives couldn't be in there one by one voting on bills, introducing legislation to cut everything that Elon Musk recommended cutting. That they haven't been doing. But the CBO accounting is also interesting because what it doesn't take into account is, he's right, it doesn't take into account the fact that the tax cuts have been permanent or were always meant to be permanent, and therefore it's kind of an accounting error, and they're using false numbers to calculate the debt. They're also not looking at other ancillary forms of income. For example, if you rent a house and it's $1,000 a month and you're covering it with your money and your income, and that's it, that's all you can spend. And then you say, you know what, I'd like to move to the beach, and that's going to be $2,000 a month. and you sign the lease on the $2,000 a month beach house. Now your debt has doubled. Your income has not. So what do? You go out and you get another job, or you sell off some of your stuff on Marketplace, or you start a side hustle, that kind of thing. You bring in other income from other places. And that's what President Donald Trump is doing with his gold cards, of which they've already sold, I think, like 500 for $5 million each. That's a pretty hefty chunk of change. The tariffs, which will bring in another few $100,000, the dedicated trillions of dollars, which people in the Mideast and in Asia have already dedicated to manufacturing. Now, is all of that guaranteed? No, it's not. Is all of this cut, or all of the cuts, guaranteed? No, it's not. But there's never a guarantee in any budget. So what you need to look at here is, who do you trust more? Is really what it all boils down to. Do you trust President Donald Trump to bring in whatever and all income sources he can in the way of tariffs, in the way of gold cards, in the way of investment in the United States of America? Do you trust Donald Trump to inspire more manufacturing and more jobs, and thus create more income tax because you're creating more income in Americans' pockets? Or do you trust Congress to do what they've never been able to do? Do you trust Congress to do something that has never been in their wheelhouse? And that is to maintain this kind of proportionate budget. I mean, they can't cut spending. They can't cut anything. They're not willing to cut the DOGE cuts. So really, what Donald Trump is asking Americans to do is trust him to get more money into their pockets so the entire economy grows, instead of trusting Congress to do what they always do, which is waste everybody's time and money. Does this give a lot more power to the executive branch? Yep. But the executive branch, I believe, has proven more powerful and more responsible than Congress, at least in the last 100 days. Listen, there's so much going on. There were a couple of clips that I wanted to share with you. And to prove that most people trust Donald Trump more than any other branch of government, there's a new poll that came out about consumer confidence.
Yes, and there are some surprises here. This is our May read on consumer confidence from the Conference Board. On the headline number, we're expecting a number somewhere north of 87. Comes in strong, 98.0. That is the best number since February of this year.
That's a consumer confidence going through the roof. There was also this about President Donald Trump and his art of the deal politics, which has not only won in the tariff battles or the tariff wars, but also with a lot of his negotiations in the Middle East and elsewhere.
The one thing I've really discovered just watching Trump over the last 3 or 4 months is really he does get the art of the deal. He doesn't show his hand. He always starts with a very strict position, and then, he negotiates from there. And what he is doing, just so people understand, is because the United States is the hub of the world economy, all of these other countries, Bill, have to trade with the United States. Yeah. Canada has to trade with the United States. Mexico does. The Britain does. The Chinese do. So he's using that leverage, and that's the word he uses in a book all the time, leverage, to get better deals for the U.S. I think in the end of the day, he will prevail.
Okay. Yeah, and that is something that we discussed last week. I talked about it on Newsmax yesterday. Donald Trump understands that in order to get what you want, you have to ask for more than you want. And then once you've asked for more than you want, and those people say, we can't do that, but let's talk, you begin to negotiate down. And if you start with, if you ask for $100 and you start negotiating, you're going to end up somewhere around $75, $60, $75. If you ask for $1,000 and you start negotiating, you're going to end somewhere around $600. And $600 is 10 times better than 60. So when Donald Trump goes in, he goes reciprocal tariffs, 100% tariffs, 70% tariffs, tariffs on everybody. And all of a sudden, everybody starts calling saying, whoa, we can't do that. Let's negotiate. And so he starts taking tariffs off of people, or granting extensions, or making, carve outs for various different industries. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, Donald Trump gets about, 60 or 70% of what he asked for, which was probably right around what he wanted in the first place, because he knew to ask for too much. That's the art of the deal. It's pretty simple. He wrote about it in his book. And that's something that, again, I believe should be mandatory reading for every single high school student. Donald Trump's doing the same thing with Harvard. He didn't like the way that Harvard was treating Jewish people. He didn't like that they were promoting anti-Semitism. He didn't like that they were harboring an environment where anti-Semites could thrive, where Jewish students felt threatened and unsafe. He didn't like that Harvard, one of the most notable and established and the oldest university in the entire country, was acting a fool and really embarrassing not just him and his, and the country, but also, students and everything else. And then, of course, there's the billions and billions of dollars that Harvard accepts from President Donald Trump and from the United States government and from federal contracts pretty much everywhere. So Donald Trump has now announced he would like to cancel $3 billion in grants to Harvard. $3 billion. Think about that. And I want to really put this in perspective. Okay. Harvard has $3 billion in grants. Harvard is one school. If Harvard's getting $3 billion in grants, other Ivy League schools are getting money. And we know Columbia has because they were threatened with losing their grants. We know Yale probably is. I'm pretty sure, UPenn and Cornell and the rest of them are. That's just one school getting $3 billion, not to mention MIT and Stanford and Vanderbilt and Duke University and what else? Notre Dame. There's a ton. There's USC, not South Carolina, Southern California, although USC could get grants too. Florida, right down the road. I imagine that the University of Florida, which is now it's like the number one public university. I think UNC, UVA, UF, they're all right up there as top universities. The University of Maryland, where Kermit the Frog gave the commencement. Kermit the Frog, my wife's alma mater. I can joke about that. Oh yeah, here's the thing. I actually can't joke about it because when I graduated from NYU, there's another one. NYU, I guarantee getting hundreds of millions of dollars in government grants. When I graduated from NYU, my commencement speaker was none other than Neil Diamond. And Neil Diamond opted not to necessarily speak because that's not what he does. He sings. Neil Diamond opted to sing a song. So he grabbed his guitar and he stood up and he sang Louie Louie. Louie Louie. Oh. It wasn't even a good song. That's what he sang. And that was my commencement speech. So if you wonder, why I am the way I am, it's because I didn't get a lot of words of wisdom from my commencement speaker. I just got, we gotta go now. Yeah. It was fun. It was a nice day in Washington Square Park. I was a little tad hungover, but that's neither here nor there. That was my commencement. So I can't really make fun of my wife's alma mater bringing in Kermit the Frog to give their speech. Although I do feel bad for all of those graduates after all that time they spent. It doesn't matter. That's neither here nor there. But Harvard gets $3 billion. And Donald Trump has now said, I would like to take that money away and I would like to give it to trade schools and use the money to invest in jobs that are very important to the rebuilding of America. Invest in jobs that are important when we have. If we're going to get all of this manufacturing, if we're going to get this influx of investment, if we're going to be building new factories and warehouses, and we're going to be bringing in new people to work in those factories and warehouses, if we're doing all that, then we're probably going to need, we're definitely going to need some people to build those factories, to build those warehouses. We're going to need people to build new roads to get to those factories and warehouses. We're going to need people to build houses for all the new workers that are going to be moving closer to those warehouses and factories. We're going to need people to maintain them. We're going to need skilled laborers for the HVAC systems and the plumbing and the electrical and the carpentry and the painting and everything else. We're going to need, who was it? It was Howard Lutnick was talking about the AI and the robotics. He said robotics and AI and these chips, if you're bringing in chip manufacturing plants, then the filtration system in the air conditioning, the air filtration system in these chip plants is incredible. They have to be state of the art. They have to be able to filter out the smallest little modicum of dust. Nothing can get through. And it is a highly skilled, highly valuable trade that we just don't have enough of. And Donald Trump said, we're going to need a lot more of these. We're going to need skilled tradesmen, carpenters, and everyone else to help grow America back to where we want it to be. And we're going to have money. We're going to have all these investors reinvesting in American manufacturing. Let's do this. Well, Harvard not too happy about that, as you can imagine. And on top of all that, Donald Trump is now canceling the final $100 million in government contracts that are going to Harvard.
The Trump administration canceling all these remaining government contracts with Harvard, $100 million worth.
Yeah, it's a lot of money there, and those are the remaining federal grants. So essentially what we know is that the administration is expected at any moment, as soon as this afternoon, to send a letter to federal agencies telling them to cancel all of their existing federal contracts with Harvard. But it actually goes further than that. It tells them to not consider Harvard, but consider other options in the future instead of Harvard, which would effectively kill the entire grant program with the federal government. Now, I want to read you part of the letter that CNN obtained. This is what's expected to go out. It says, "We recommend that your agency terminate for convenience each contract that it determines has failed to meet its standards and transition to a new vendor." It says, "Going forward, we also encourage your agency to seek alternative vendors for future services where you had previously considered Harvard." Agencies have time, but just until June 6th to respond with what cancellations they have actually done. And remember, Wolf, as you guys have just noted, this is just the latest in an ongoing escalation. I want to take a look at what we have seen from the White House, from the administration when it comes to Harvard, really for the last month here. Starting back in April 14th, they froze $2.2 billion in grants. April 15th, they threatened Harvard's tax-exempt status. April 17th, they demanded international student records. May 13th, they froze another $450 million in funding. May 22nd, they moved to bar international students. May 26th, they considered redirecting $3 billion from Harvard to trade schools. And then, of course, May 27th, we're here where we are expecting this White House to send this letter, the GSA, General Services Administration, to send this letter to federal agencies to cut those remaining federal contracts. So clearly an escalation here. Of course, as we know, Wolf, the administration has accused Harvard of having liberal bias, of allowing anti-Semitic behavior on campuses, among other things.
Yeah, well, they accuse them with good right. Listen, I want to look at this. This is what you call an onslaught. This is a barrage. April 14th, freezes $2.2 billion in grants. April 15th, threatens tax-exempt status on tax day. That was one of my favorites. April 17th, demands international student records to make sure that there's no international terrorists coming through as students. May 13th, freezes another $450 million in funding. How much money do these people get and why? No, May 22nd, moves to bar international students. And then, of course, she said May 25th, cuts the rest of the funding to Harvard in the form of $3 billion. That is an obscene amount of money going to one university. And President Donald Trump says, why are we doing this? Especially when they don't support our American ideals and they don't support our Jewish friends and they don't support the ideas of neighborliness. I don't know what you would call it. They're just, they're spewing hate is what they're doing. And they're aligning themselves with terrorists. And a lot of that money, as Donald Trump pointed out, goes to foreign students. And they don't, listen, I played this the other, I'm going to play it for you again. Donald Trump said, look, these international students, they don't stay here. They don't benefit us. The United States is paying for the education of foreign students who leave. Why aren't their own countries paying for them? Why? Oh, what I guess the file's gone. That's okay. Why aren't their own countries paying for them? He said, what happens is these students come to Harvard. We give them grants. They go in, they learn, they use our laboratory research. They use all the money. They're working off of these federal contracts. They get a great education. They go back. They go back to India. They go back to China. They go back to Indonesia. They go back to Europe. Wherever they came from, they go back and they make a living and they take everything we taught them in the United States of America with our money that we gave them as grants. And that's it. 27% of Harvard students are international. And Donald Trump says they should be subsidized by their own countries. They're not going to be subsidized by us anymore. And Harvard is suing. And a judge, of course, said Harvard has every right to sue. And Stephen Miller called them tyrannical. I think I cleaned out all those clips because I had to clear out my hard drive. But you know the thing. That's exactly what's been going on. And now Donald Trump says it's going to stop. The other thing, and I talked about this in the 47 Daily podcast, but it's worth mentioning again. If you want to, you can go back and listen to this morning's 47 Daily podcast if you haven't yet. Every single morning, I wake up, I pour a cup of coffee, just like this one here. Delicious. And I record the most up-to-date news coming from the White House, not from anywhere else, just from the White House, just from the administration. We call it the 47daily.com. From the White House to my mouth to your ears for the next 4 years. And I talked a little bit about what Donald Trump's what the plan is with this whole thing, because not only is Donald Trump freezing them out or trying to bankrupt Harvard, defunding Harvard, if you will, but the money that the federal government gives to Harvard, it doesn't go to these pro-Hamas people. They're all like, they're all the kooks in the liberal arts program, and they're all the theater majors, and they're all the humanities, and they're all English majors and international studies and all that other crap. No, the money goes to Harvard Med School, to the laboratories, to the science, the science sectors. It goes into all of the research, robotics and cancer research, all this other stuff. That's where the government contracts go. And there's a lot of people there that don't give a diddly squat about Hamas. They don't care about Palestine. They don't want Jewish students to be harassed. They don't want people sleeping in their courtyards. They don't want the American flag being replaced with the Palestinian flag. They don't want any of that. They just want to go in, geek out on research, hang out in the lab, cure cancer in rats or whatever it is, send somebody to Venus or Mars or wherever they're going to go, build robots and AI. That's what they want to do at Harvard. They're all a bunch of Mark Zuckerbergs. But the problem is they're going to lose all of their funding because of the idiots across the quad who are burning things down and yelling and screaming and locking themselves in libraries. And if you have one faction of students being punished for the idiocy and the chaotic, rambunctious, illegal, lunatic behavior of another group of students, then you're probably going to have some kind of intercollegiate warfare. You're probably going to have some kind of intercollegiate, let's just say, civil war. You're going to have all of the egghead research students who are losing billions of dollars in funding, and the international students who no longer will be able to go to Harvard. You're going to have them furious, totally upset. Are they going to be upset with Donald Trump? No. You know who they're going to be upset with? The idiot pro-Palestinian Hamas terrorist students who are yelling and screaming at the Jews and locking themselves in the library. That's who they're going to be mad with. And eventually, Harvard is going to explode. And the people at Harvard are going to have to make some kind of decision. Who's going to get what they want? The pro-Hamas terrorist Palestinian students who may be from here, maybe from somewhere else, who are terrorizing Jewish students, destroying school property, violating laws, or the eggheads who do research in the lab, make positive change for mankind, and make a lot of money for the school. I imagine at the end of the day, the people that bring in the money are going to win. Now, in the meantime, this is all going to court. But think about it this way. The more Donald Trump does, and Donald Trump does a lot. You saw in that clip, the more Donald Trump does, the more Harvard is going to sue. And the more Harvard is going to sue, the more they're going to pay. And the more Harvard pays, the less they have to do whatever they want with, like research. If Donald Trump is forcing them into court, that's an expenditure that's going to explode. And you saw Donald Trump in the last month. There were like 8 things he did. Harvard's going to bring them all up in front of a judge. They already do. They are going to be losing money on legal fees. Donald Trump knows this. Donald Trump has his legal budget as head of the executive branch with the Department of Justice. His legal budget is, it's unmatched. You cannot go against the federal government and expect to outspend them. It's not going to happen. The federal government, as we know, just prints more money. There are more lawyers working for the federal government than anywhere else in the world. And Harvard is going to have to make some tough choices. They can't sue Donald Trump forever. They can't appeal forever. Donald Trump will keep dropping the hammer on them until they concede. And they know that. It's going to be an interesting thing to see. Now, the trade schools are all hoping they get the money because the trade schools don't get any money. And there's a lot of good things that can be done with trade schools. I think this was Fox. I'm not sure what it was. They did something. They went out, they found a guy who's a carpenter, and they talked to him and they said, hey, what do you think it mean? What would it mean to you if President Donald Trump, if they actually got, if the trade schools actually got $3 billion, what would that mean to you? And listen to this. Here's what he said. This was pretty cool. Where is it? Here it is. Listen to this.
You also said that the best way to teach somebody to build a house is to actually build a house, which obviously is extremely expensive. So if this money is really put into trade schools, how should it be used to help benefit those trades?
I think there's lots of different opportunities. A local school near me that I know actually has a plot of land that they have, and they basically subdivide it and they build a house each year with the students. I think you can kind of kill two birds with one stone right there, because you're helping provide to the actual like housing deficit and the fact that we need more houses on the market, while doing at a cheaper rate, because you're doing it with the schools, but then also being able to teach the students more effectively all at the same time.
Yeah. What was your reaction when you first saw this Truth Social post by President Trump? Were you thinking, man, I mean, this could really turn things around for this country?
I think it could definitely be influential. I think it could definitely go a certain route where it really is great for the industry and great for the country altogether. So really, I mean, I saw it and I feel like it's probably just the kind of thing, like, you know, he's still at it. He's still
coming up with
stuff, so.
different and new ideas. What was your trade school experience like, and would you recommend it to other people?
Okay, yeah, I'm sure he says it was great and he'd love it. But think about this. This is amazing. These trade schools are out there, and they say the best way to teach someone to build a house is to build a house. So we're going to go build a house. Well, that's expensive. And they build a house, and the house is there, and he says that's a house that someone can actually live in, someone can buy. They could, I don't know, donate it to Habitat for Humanity. I don't know what they could do with it, but there's all kinds of different things you could do. And if they had more money, they could build more houses. They could train more craftsmen. There are contests. There are skills contests, much like, you know, football skills or basketball skills. Imagine, like, you know, you go to one of those contests where like the All-Star, you know, the football, the Pro Bowl, where they have a football throwing contest and a tackling contest and all this stuff. They do that for craftsmen as well. How quickly can you saw a 2x4 into 8 pieces that are, you know, a foot long each? I know, whatever. How quickly can you nail, you know, an entire roof together? Whatever. They have these competitions, and with more money, they could have more competitions. They could have more prize money. They could have more judges. They could have better, you know, more consistent training programs. They could have more modernized training programs. It's amazing. Everybody could benefit with more money in the trade school system. And so it's a really unique idea. And it's something that President Donald Trump has floated, not just to troll Harvard, but also to get people thinking about trade schools. I mean, think about this. If you know that you could go to a trade school, maybe there's scholarships. Maybe you get a scholarship to go to the Tulsa Welding School or some other place, and all of a sudden you have a lucrative career. You go to school for free. You get a career certificate that can make you, I mean, these people, they make tons of money. Skilled laborers, electricians, plumbers, welders, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, some of them. In fact, I don't know if he's the richest guy. Let's just say one of the richest guys I know. I know a few guys who are like really rich. You know, there's some guys that are rich, some guys that are really rich. The richest guy I know, he owns a service that sprays your lawn. Okay. And I always said, you know, I always joke with him. I go, so wait a minute, you made all this money spraying crap on people's lawns? And he says, literally, that's what I do because it's fertilizer. But he goes, yeah, you know, it's interesting because he bought a truck and he went around, he started spraying people's lawns, and they pay him every month. And he goes, so I got $100 a month from, like, you know, 20 people, and then 50 people, then 100 people. And then I got so much money, I bought another truck and another truck and another truck. And he said, but here's the interesting thing. In the state of Florida, the EPA and all of the environmental protection, you know, regulations that come out, every single year, they've regulated his industry to the point where he said, I can barely put any chemicals in these trucks. The amount of chemicals we used to put on your lawn and fertilizer and everything, it was a lot of chemicals. He goes, now, he said, it's probably 98% water, 99% water, if not more. So he gets paid $100 per house, per lawn, thousands and thousands of these lawns, to just go spray what's basically water on the lawn because the government won't allow him to do more. And in Florida, the HOAs are very demanding. The HOAs demand that your lawn be green, that it be fresh, that it be watered, that you not have any dead grass. They will come around and they will take photos and they'll leave them. They have police. They have lawn police that make sure your lawn isn't substandard, so it brings down everyone else's property value. So he's killing it. And he, I think, recently bought out another company or sold to another, whatever. It doesn't matter. All I know is he's always in Europe with his family. He's playing golf in in Scotland, where they created the game of golf. One of the richest guys I know. Didn't go to Harvard, didn't get a business degree, just started a trade, and that's it. Because people need it. That's the stuff that people need. We don't really need more lawyers or more, women's study experts. We do need a lot of tradespeople. We do need a lot of skilled craftsmen. We do need a lot of people that want to do the work that nobody else wants. And if we can get $3 billion to help them realize that would be fantastic. Hey, speaking of help, I do want to shout out Hanging with the Huns, dropping a $19.99 super chat. We'll just round it up and say, call it $20. Happy 24th anniversary to Todd and Kaye. Your show has inspired the Hanging with the Huns YouTube channel, where I've created a Tuesday spotlight of Mark Kaye. Oh, really? Thank you so much. At #bootliquor. Liquor like an LIQUOR. Todd Hun, by the way, is I think my lamps, I moved it to the other room. What he does is he takes bottles and he turns them into lamps. And we had one in the studio forever, and I had one actually over here, but I just moved it to the other room because I needed a light. But he brought us a Trump. I had a Trump and a bullet, 2 lamps. One of them is a bottle of Trump wine, and he turned the bottle into a lamp. It's really amazing. And he can turn any bottle, and really, I think he can turn anything you want into a lamp. So if you're interested in a unique, one-of-a-kind lamp experience, Hanging with the Huns, also check out their YouTube channel. And thank you, Todd Hun, for the very generous $20 super chat. If you would like me to shout you out or shout out your business or say hi to your honey or, promposal, it's probably too late for that. Maybe maybe you have someone graduating, you'd like me to shout them out. All you got to do is drop a super chat of $5 or more or a Rumble rant, and we will get that out there. And then you know what you can do? It's like Cameo, only better. But anyway, thank you so much, Todd. I really appreciate that. And we appreciate everybody who leaves Rumble rants and super chats and supports the show in whatever way that you feel you can support the show, because let's face it, this show needs a lot of support. Don't forget, by the way, that on June 9th, which is a Monday, not this coming Monday, but a week from this coming Monday, 2 weeks from yesterday, I'm going to be making a big, huge announcement, and I'm going to be doing it at 12 noon. And the reason for that is because it's a standalone, and it's that big. It's that big. It's a big standalone announcement. So at noon, I'll be posting the announcement, and then we're going to get the live show as well. So you'll get like a twofer. Make sure you subscribe to this channel though, because if you're not subscribed to the channel, you're not going to know. You're not going to remember. Trust me, it's tough. If you don't set the notifications, you're not going to get notified when the big announcement goes live, and you want to be one of the first. You want to be one of the first, for sure, to be in on this, because it's potentially life-changing. Not just my life, but your life, because what I'm announcing could potentially change the course of this country. And that's not hyperbole. That's exactly true. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. Don't forget, we're going to be here all week long, and then I am preparing some new stuff for next week as well. I figure just because I'm gone, we've got the technology. We can do some cool stuff. We're going to have some fun people on. We're going to make it as exciting as we can. And like the, who was it said? Oh, here we go. Like, Oh Miss Believer said, I love how you post multiple times a day if needed to get the info out to your listeners. Yes, I will continue to do so multiple times per day, because I am severely conservative. Thank you again to all of our Tuesday Reviews Day reviews as well. Leave a review. We'll get to you on a future episode. And don't forget, subscribe, like, share. Make sure you're here every day. Make sure you're listening and learning. Make sure that you stay informed and entertained and inspired. Make sure that you're enlightened to the truth, and that you are aware of the threats, which are many and are growing. And they're not just on the left. As we see, we've got threats on the right. And some of our biggest and brightest and most formidable warriors are being defeated by a cadre, if you will, of our own kind. And that just ain't cool. That just ain't cool. If Elon Musk can't get the DOGE cuts passed through or pushed through, who can? And will they ever? It's going to be interesting to watch, and we will be here every single day to let you know what you need to do to continue to stand up for good, to push back on evil, to fight, so that you can save the Republic. We will have a brief after party. Go to kayetrids.com if you're not a member. If you are a member, We're going to have a brief after party, and it's going to be amazing. We'll see you in a minute.